An estimated $30 billion is available to help compensate victims and their families. If you or a member of your family have been diagnosed with mesothelioma, you may be able to receive some of this money without ever going to court or filing a lawsuit. Get a free legal review today. Call Sokolov Law at 1-800-972-3229. That number again, 1-800-972-3229, 1-800-972-3229. Call today, 1-800-972-3229.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, and your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com.
6:37, Team Hochberg Traffic Center time, and Jim Talamonte.
CTA red and purple line service remains disrupted on the north side of Chicago between Howard and Belmont. There was a mechanical issue with the train. Passengers have been getting evacuated from this train and walked down the tracks by fire department personnel. So the power has been cut. There are shuttles available, and buses are an option as well. Looking at traffic right now on the inbound Stevenson, it's a little tight Ashland to the Ryan. You're looking at a 1 or 2 minute delay there. Inbound Ryan traffic slow. Roosevelt to the Burns Circle. It's 15 minutes from 95th to downtown. Outbound it's 14. Tri-State southbound at 60. There was a medical emergency blocking a couple of lanes at the ramp. That cleared. That's traffic. I'm Jim Talamonte on AM 560 The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next in our 1 hour heating and air conditioning weather center. Clouds and sun with showers possible midday, heavier thunderstorm through the afternoon, high 81. Currently, we have 69 degrees. Next news coming up at 7, breaking news as it happens. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Douglas Automotive is proud to sponsor AM 560 The Answer's website feature, Shop Local During the Outbreak. Visit douglasautomotive.com today.
Service with integrity, Douglas Automotive.
If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. American History mob version. In that version, St. Louis needs to be renamed. In that version, Ulysses S. Grant needs to be forgotten. Ulysses S. Grant statue toppled in the Golden Gate Park in San Francisco.
Do they have any clue what they just did? Do they have any clue who he is and what he did to end slavery? No.
No, I suspect they don't, but we're not in the business of assessing history on the merits. We're in the business of deferring to the mob, genuflecting to the mob, allowing those who have a particular skin pigmentation to decide what is and is not known, what is and is not true, what is and is not taught. Also tore down the statues of St. Junipero Serra and Francis Scott Key, the author of the lyrics for the Star-Spangled Banner, of course. I believe it was Frederick Douglass who referred to Grant as the man to whom, more than any other man, the Negro, Frederick Douglass's phraseology of the time, owes his enfranchisement. Yeah. Frederick Douglass, freed slave, referred to Grant as the man to whom is owed, more than any other man, the emancipation of the slaves.
President Trump brought that up during his rally in Tulsa.
The unhinged left-wing mob is trying to vandalize our history, desecrate our monuments, our beautiful monuments. Tear down our statues and punish, cancel, and persecute anyone who does not conform to their demands for absolute and total control. We're not conforming. That's why we're here, actually.
In Minnesota, the Duluth School District is removing To Kill a Mockingbird and The Adventures of Huck Finn from its curriculum because their content makes students feel humiliated or marginalized. That's a school district that includes more than 20 schools. So Harper Lee,
Bye-bye.
Mark Twain,
Bye-bye.
Gregory Peck's acting career, I guess that we'll have to blot that out too.
Take back any awards that he won. Yeah.
Anybody else involved in the film version of the Harper Lee classic. It's not surprising that they want to rename St. Louis, named after King Louis IX, because King Louis IX, among his accomplishments, was bringing the presumption of innocence to criminal proceedings in France. And, of course, that is an anathema to the might makes right crowd that is taking down these statues. It will be an anathema right until these neo-Hobbesians run into somebody mightier. And the question is, will they? For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Freddy Gray, deputy editor of The Spectator, editor for Spectator USA, and host of the Americano podcast. Freddie, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Good to be with you, Dan Namey. How are you enjoying your cultural revolution?
I'm not enjoying it at all.
Yes.
I'm miserable.
Not as much.
Pretty miserable on this side of the pond, too.
Yeah, well, right, exactly. So Churchill is apparently a bad guy these days in the UK as well.
He's been put in a box. Yeah, he's been put in a box.
And
what did he ever do against fascism?
And so, so what about that? We just, look, let's take the construction most beneficial to the Jacobins. Hey, look, we've got some new standards of application for who we extol, who we elevate as somebody to be emulated, and we're going to eliminate anybody involved with slavery or anybody involved with Jim Crow or anybody involved with racism. And we're just going to set forward new standards so that we have people that are more representative of the modern West when it comes to statues or building names or school names and the like.
Well, I mean, the big question is, what authority do you have to do it? And they have no authority other than their own. And that's not how life is supposed to work in a liberal society where you have justice under the law. You're supposed to maintain the law and try and change it.
Oh, you mean so you're still like in a free society? You're supposed to go through the channels that have been set up to like petition the government to say reconsider naming this school something else, reconsider removing this statue and placing a statue of this person there instead. Go through it like a civilly. You don't just go through it like you're pulling down the statue of Saddam Hussein.
Yes, yeah, I'm one of these crazy idealists that doesn't believe in mob law.
Yeah, well, right, and then so this is where we go. And as VDH wrote last week, normally these mobs run out of energy under their own steam, except and unless you can get somebody, or you can get the power structure, some bodies that essentially turn over the keys of power to the mob and allow them to dictate policy. And that seems to me where the real danger is. It's not the one-off statue that's being taken down. It's turning over the keys of legitimacy to the mob.
Well, I completely agree. I mean, the problem is this isn't a rebellion in many ways. In many ways, it's a great act of conformity. There are lots of institutions in America that encourage the type of thinking that we're seeing, that encourage the type of behavior we're seeing. You get a lot in the media, you get a lot in academia, you get it in corporations. So what you have now is it's not a revolt, it's an enforcement of a way of thinking that is very dominant in elite American life.
Yeah. What do you think of what French President Emmanuel Macron is doing? I mean, he's publicly disavowing racism, but says colonial era statues will remain. Has he, have people listened to him in France?
Well, it's very interesting that Macron's now behaving like the populist leader when he was always meant to be the centrist neoliberal. But I think he's realized that the French public are as opposed to this as anyone else, and the leaders who act tough on this are going to be rewarded at the ballot eventually if they stick to their guns.
J.D. Vance, the author of Hillbilly Elegy, as you know, an interesting comments with his during his latest appearance on Tucker Carlson's show, and he basically asked the question you ask during all sorts of conflict, which is, okay, who benefits from this conflict? Who benefits from the acrimony in American culture or in the West generally? And he says, well, who's gotten richer because of it? We know that Amazon has a little bit more market share. At the end of the day, we're not talking about what we should be talking about. We're not talking about the concentrated financial power, which is the biggest problem that white and black middle-class Americans face today. So he essentially argues that who benefits from this division among Americans and peoples of the West? Corporate America does.
Corporate America and the type of corporate America that doesn't actually employ as many people as corporate America used to. So you're seeing a bigger concentration of power among a smaller number of people. I would just say that having been in Britain for the last few months, the Tucker Carlson show is a very refreshing, and of course your show, are very refreshing, rare oases of sanity in what looks like America going mad.
Well, and
but it's spreading across the pond, though. I mean, it's in European countries, and
Yeah, well, I mean, what's that famous Breitbart line? Politics is downstream from culture, but in Britain we're downstream from American politics and culture. So we're kind of getting the raw sewage as it comes down from America.
Well,
and it's not taking long. I mean, it's spread very quickly.
And Boris Johnson, I mean, his haircut notwithstanding, Boris Johnson is a man of letters. I mean, this is somebody who actually is an intellectual. A lot of people in America, I don't think, appreciate that. But he knows his British history, and I wonder what his response has been to the mobs tearing down statues and trying to rewrite history in the UK.
Well, he said the right things. I mean, he said it's unacceptable. He hasn't been quite as dynamic as Macron. I think a lot of people are a bit disappointed by that. And there's a sort of general feeling that ever since he fell ill with COVID-19, his premiership has lacked a bit of energy. That's maybe come back in the last few days slightly. But we certainly feel a bit rudderless. The British government feels pretty rudderless, particularly as it tries to deal with the COVID crisis and also Brexit, which is fast approaching.
And also another terrorist attack in London, lest we forget that the threat that Islamofascism still poses, including in London.
Yes, a stabbing that took place in the aftermath of a Black Lives Matter protest, so a sort of heightened sense of lawlessness going on. And Britain feels pretty chaotic too at the moment.
And about I mean, similarly, we had this shooting inside CHOP or Chaz, this newly created independent nation in Seattle, and the police were not able to get to the shooting victims too. So I mean, just in terms of sort of general anarchy, which I guess you expect from those who are inclined to anarchism. But with respect to that terrorist attack, can you give us any more color than has been provided so far about the nature of that or the planning?
It's being treated as a terrorist incident. It looks like a kind of lone wolf terrorist incident. That's what it seems at the moment. It's not proven anyway. This guy was on MI5 watch list, so authorities were aware of him being a danger. But almost every time we have a terrorist attack now, it turns out that he was being watched, but then he wasn't deemed enough of a threat to continue being watched. And I mean, in a way, that sounds like the British authorities don't have a clue what they're doing. It's not actually their fault. They have something like 40,000 people they're supposed to be surveilling all the time. There's just not the budget or the ability to do that.
But it is interesting because it sort of speaks to something that Attorney General Barr said over the weekend in his interview with Maria Bartiromo, which is that the protests, fine, peaceful protest, petition your government, express yourselves, but they're being used by those who, a small percentage of those out in the streets who just have an interest in violence, and it can come from a lot of different directions, including the terrorist direction.
Well, yeah, I mean, I totally agree, and I think when police departments kind of allow elements of lawlessness to go by, lawlessness increases and becomes more dangerous, and it'll just get worse and worse until people in positions of leadership start stating the obvious, which is that we have to have law and order to live in a civilized society.
And how is the COVID-19 reopening proceeding in the UK?
Step by step, the government's been going pretty slowly, but I think tomorrow there might be a major announcement on restaurants and things reopening. It looks like we're going back to normal finally, a bit slower than some of your states.
Well, what
But,
about schools? Are universities and elementary and high schools going to reopen?
Schools are being kicked down the road. I'm going completely insane with my children.
Yes.
But they are going back in September at the moment, it looks like, for most children. Although they're doing clever things like expanding key worker status. So some of us might be able to get our children in before others. We'll see. It's all a little bit unclear on the school front.
Yeah, I think that lack of clarity is purposeful, don't you? It seems to me that the lockdown politicians who are in charge are purposely trying to hold out to get the information they need closer to the go, no-go date to be it more approximating a no-go than a go. And so they just want to work on the best information they have available to make their case when they announce their no-go decision.
Agreed. It's also an abdication of responsibility because if you don't have a clear policy, you haven't clearly got it wrong.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
there you go.
Exactly.
That explains
Exactly.
it,
Right.
yeah.
That's why you punt. Exactly. Freddie Gray, deputy editor of the Spectator, editor of Spectator USA, and host of the Americano podcast. Freddie, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Great pleasure.
Take care.
Thanks. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy on the AM 560 The Answer mobile app. Just text the word app to 64636 to download the app today.
The Lou Dobbs Financial Report is brought to you by Signature Bank, helping local businesses succeed. Visit signaturebank.bank for your commercial banking needs.
I'm Lou Dobbs. Hiring is on the rise. Apple closing retail stores in states where the China virus is spiking. Disney World continues to be cautious about its reopening. Those stories next.